Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Shannon Scott. Your story is coming to you from beautiful, beautiful Savannah, Georgia, and the Catholic cemetery of the 1850s. Not far from my home. This is where I walk and have spent a lot of time. Used to bring my dog Kelsey McGee out here quite a bit when she was a young thing. We ran this place pretty heavily together for a long time. But I'm here at the Wilson family plot of Jerome Wilson, his wife Bridget, children extended family here, like Grace Wilson back there in the background. And one of the most important projects that I'll probably ever work on in my lifetime through our nonprofit, the Cemetery Angels, is in respect to this family plot, which we've collaborated with some of the descendants, in particular Tina Wilson, who is the great-great-granddaughter of the photographer Jerome and his wife Bridget there. Really special person. And when I say one of the most important projects, I mean this is one of the most important historical figures that Savannah has ever known. And that's, that's a tall claim, because there certainly have been, hundreds if not thousands. But here's partly why we give a special prop or respect to artists and photographers that come to define, the aesthetical value or the aesthetical look of a civilization. And while, just 100 feet from us here, you have the famous painter and artist family of the Murphys, the many Christopher Murphys who are painters. We don't really have maybe a historical Van Gogh. We've got a great sculptor that, you guys, if you followed the page, about John Walls. And he has artworks out here in the Catholic as well, adding innumerable pieces to Bonaventure Cemetery. But as far as the overall cityscape, the overall texture and aesthetic of Savannah, Georgia, in many ways that was defined, at least in the public eye, in the 19th century by the photographer Jerome Wilson. Now, there were others, too, that were locals, like J.D. Ryan, Goebel, and Lowney and Goebel. I mean, a number of wonderful local photographers. But in my mind, they were all kind of walking around in the wake of Jerome Wilson. And he was the man that, tirelessly in heat, cold, under amazing conditions to lug around ladders, his crew, the Browning cameras and other types of cameras to set up, and took photographs of Bonaventure, which I think meet almost the terms of high art. They were very artistic in their eye, if you will. So, those live oak alleys, the arching tree branches, the draping moss. But it wasn't just Bonaventure that he defined, out there in the world. He went to every kind of walk of life, and part of town from, he's really basically Emancipation Hour as a photographer. He's post-emancipation. But he went to those sharecropper, former slave cabins, took the photos of the families in their everyday life. He attempted to identify and document animals and plant life that would seem exotic and strange and foreign, to people all over the world. And that's the thing. It's like, you can buy his postcard, or rather postcards and stereo views on eBay, out of other countries, which I've done many times. I collect his work. And I've got some real, unique things, to say the least. And that's always growing and ongoing and gets increasingly expensive with his kind of resurgence of popularity. But, out here in this cemetery, you've got iron workers like Kehoe and Rourke. You've got the Murphy family. You've got brick masons. I mean, really a lot of the cemetery and city aesthetic in terms of the building arts, the building crafts, those people of fame, let's say, are out here in the Catholic cemetery near downtown Savannah. But Jerome Wilson gladly photographed that. The life among those objects, the buildings and the moss and the trees and the headstones and everything else. And he showed the world what Savannah was, St. Augustine was, Jacksonville. He loved the natural settings against the creeks and the barrier islands. I'm sure there would have been a lot more he could have done if he didn't, he and his wife didn't end up having, I believe, 7 or 8 children, I think it is. And anyway, let me show you a couple of the classic images here. And then we'll talk about the projects that I hope to have your help with, your assistance with. So this is a family portrait. Jerome there being with the long beard, and his wife Bridget, and we see Grace, and 4 children of 1886. We also have let me just pick these up. The classic stereo views that he would produce with stunning views of Savannah and Bonaventure, this being Bonaventure Cemetery for those that don't know. Here is one of Johnson Square, downtown Savannah, with the Nathaniel Greene Monument and Burial Site, although this is before his bones and his son George Washington Greene's bones were reinterred there. But some kids playing down there in the corner, and although way in the background you may see over their shoulder a building with quite a dramatic staircase entrance. That's the old Screven House Hotel. That's no longer there, but that's where Jerome Wilson, for a time, our photographer, had a studio. So it's kind of neat that he just kind of walked across the square, took this photograph. But, that's the kind of stuff he put out there in the public imagination. He saw every type of thing, from the Civil War to disease, taking 3 of his children, possibly an infant that is buried here as well that I don't think has a name, or does somewhere, but I'm not aware of it. I'll show you that in a moment. But yeah, he fought legal battles to protect his craft. And what I think is really fascinating is that the 2 family homes are still standing downtown, because as I tell people, these cemeteries and the cityscape of Savannah are really survival stories. It is a tale of what's left, which is why everything is so precious, and there's often so much passion connected to these things in the debates and conversations about where to put a parking garage or not, which there's a current one debate. But, my point is the fact that, we have their gravesite surviving here. We have 2 homes downtown, one at York and Drayton next to a tattoo studio. And then across from the famous 1790, there's a group of brick row houses, and that one bears a plaque talking about the Wilson family. And we'll call that maybe a main homestead of a kind. But anyway, my organization, the Cemetery Angels, is loosely funded, but there's a lot of passion. We're only about 3 years old. Our first project was the Johnny Mercer plot in Bonaventure, still under our kind of care. And the second real notable, significant project, and you could say that certainly Johnny Mercer and that plot is perhaps the most famous plot in all of Savannah. But this is right up there in my mind because of all the things we've talked about. And, you can kind of look around and see, we won't call it the dinginess, but the natural aging of the other stones nearby. I mean, that has its own, appeal to the taphophiles, but sometimes those plots, in many cases, those plots are unknown to descendants. The families have all moved away, died off, and they're kind of left in the public care, you know what I mean? And the money is very different from the gold dollar driven age of the Victorian to today's money, which is why most of these cemeteries fell apart after the American Depression and are really in the public care. This is obviously the cemetery connected to St. John's Basilica downtown, the enormous, in my mind, cathedral, but officially now a basilica. But, these are all parishioners, if you will, of the Catholic Church there, and probably some other Catholic churches too. But having said that, this plot looked like many of the neighboring 2 months ago. But through the cemetery angels and collaborating with the Wilson family, we got invested in cleaning and straightening up some of the pillar posts and cleaning those, which is still ongoing because some of them are a little more delicate and need some other plans. But we sent this baby urn. I mentioned the baby that I'm unsure if it has a known name, but this was broken. The urn portion had toppled over, and there were some other issues with it. So we sent that into studio with a very gifted guy. He's been a very important person in preservation in Savannah for a long time in the cemeteries, but prefers to live more anonymously. But we want to say thank you to that very gifted guy. He's very generous in helping out here and in many other endeavors. But the project that we have on the deck next is also in respect to 3 children that died of diphtheria in 1879 and are not in the photo that I showed you guys. That is on the far side, Margaret Wilson, here in the middle, John Wilson, and then down here on the end where some moss has gotten all snuggly, that is Jerome Wilson Jr. And John and Jerome here were basically 9 and 10 years of age when they died in 1879 in the York Street house, by the way, for those that are into the history and like to know where things are and like to peek things. It's a beautiful Savannah gray brick house right there on East York and Drayton. And then way down in the end is Margaret, who I believe was 13 at the time she passed, but they all died in those same hours of October. I believe all of them are October 1879. So what a loss, I try to talk about how we're not just here in some vanity way, just trying to straighten things up to make them pretty and clean them and get them ordered. I mean, you can see where the dirt line is there and how those have basically buried the birth dates and the death dates for, quite a number of years now. But it's been dug out so we can basically elevate it and stabilize it and get it cleaned up and all that. But no, we're here to really, remember and reflect on the lives they led, the loss that they experienced. We're here to devote ourselves spiritually in the passionate work of remembering them, and without them having gone before us, that our lives would not have as much substance. And I think we live in a world, sadly, driven intentionally to forget that at times. And then unconsciously, people within, let's say, the machine have just lost sight and don't remember the importance of that stuff. But that's what we're here to do in some part in our own way, is to remind people of that. And that's why this work is also important. It's not just about cleaning the stones and protecting the stones and, I guess having the claim that we did that. It's really because we're here because in some human way we love these people. We love, them for all their accomplishments, their flaws, the struggle we only have a sense of, but, a definitive sense of. We can never really know all of the trials and tribulations, but isn't that sort of a commentary back to us, right? And what we go through and what we experience. So anyway, we know too that one day we'll either have a grave or we won't. I mean, that's the bottom line. Most of us will probably just, end up donating our bodies or being cremated, and that's all fine and well, but this was the heyday of all this, and thankfully we have it to meditate upon, and we're honored and privileged to take care of it and be stewards and shepherds, of these things. But we need your help, is my point. It was a very long-winded pitch, I realize, but we appreciate you hanging in there. We need your help for now to fix this triplicate headstone, which is, pushing 7 feet in length, and it weighs, I'm going to guess, 200 pounds, maybe 250. We've got to get it up out of the ground higher, stabilize it, clean it, make it good for decades. And then that's just, that's not the end of this project. We're going to kind of elevate Jerome and his wife Bridget's headstones, put their foot markers further down. My guess is that these had side runners to make them full cradles, but those have since vanished for whatever reason. A lot of this stuff got stolen in hard economic times, or there may not have been running boards or runners, and it may have just been the footstones. But either way, we're going to put them down here reasonably, and then we're going to have a little signage here that tells the history of the family and why they were so interesting and all of that. So what we're asking for are some donations, and that can be $5, 10, 20, 100, 500, whatever you want to give. But if you'll please consider going to cemeteryangels.org and help us keep doing the angels work of cemeteries, or the work of angels in cemeteries. That's what we're all about. We want you to be one of our angels. You can do a monthly recurring payment of $20, $50, whatever you see. But what I want to let people know is that if you donate $500 or more, we'll make sure that you get some special shout out if you want that recognition in the social media platforms of Bonaventure and some of the other ones that we control. And also some tour tickets. So, if you're into downtown history of the historic district, we'll make sure you get some tour tickets for that, or Bonaventure Cemetery. If you donate over $1,000, my promise to you is that I will conduct, I personally, and I've been touring Savannah cemeteries now for 25 years, I will conduct a private cemetery tour of Bonaventure that I call a half-day experience. That's a 3 or 4 hour thing that is high energy. If you can't tell that already, I'm high energy. It's a lot of information. You get to see a lot and understand a lot. It is like a mini symposium class, master class inside of a cemetery tour. I promise you. Just look me up. But if you want to do a multi-cemetery tour within that half-day experience, we can cover multiple. And, if you want to do a little bit of downtown, that's fine too. But a lot of this is really cemetery focused. So, if you don't care about cemeteries that much, by the time you're done, they'll be one of your favorite things, I promise you. But yeah, that's for anybody that donates $1,000 or more, which will do a lot here in the Wilson plot, but will also add to some of our other future projects. And that's the thing. We don't get paid. We're just doing stuff for the families and the renovation and restoration. But guys, thanks for watching. Please consider, again, going to cemeteryangels.org and just sign up at the very least and get information about tours and other events. But take good care of yourselves, and we'll story you guys soon.